Hello, bonjour, namaste, ni hao, and ohio, everybody. What is going on? It is Gale here. Welcome back to the YouTube channel once again for another Danmachi Season 5 video. And today we are also back on a set, of course, after a couple of days of not playing the game, of course, right? And having it on screen for you guys to watch alongside me talking about some Danmachi content. We have it back, but of course along with that we also have some cut contents to discuss, and today we're not only going to be doing episode 8's cut contents, we're also going to be doing episode 7's cut contents, because of course if you guys weren't aware, I did miss out on talking about it last week, of course, right? Unfortunately, I got, like I said, busy with doing some binge recording for you guys. Of course, over the next week or a couple of weeks I won't be home to record any videos, so I'm trying to backlog a couple of videos for you guys, of course, so that you guys have some content to watch while I'm away, just enjoying my holiday, enjoying my time out with family and stuff, right? So would love to see what you guys think about the videos coming up, of course, right? And let me know in the comments what you guys would like to see, because I still have some days, right, before I go on vacation. So if there's any videos you guys would like me to make and record for you guys, I can try and get it done. It's the perfect opportunity for you guys to get some, maybe discussion videos or review videos out for you guys in terms of, certain things and topics, of course, regarding the series, of course, right? So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys would like to see potentially. Now, of course, in today's video, like I said, we're going to be covering 2 episodes cut content. So depending on what you want to watch, there will be chapters in this video as well. So you guys can click on where you want to, which one you want to watch first and foremost. If you don't want to watch episode 7's cut contents, you can skip that. If you want to only watch episode 8's cut contents, you can do that. It's up to you. The choice is yours. To be honest, I didn't give you much choice there. I gave you saying, oh, you can skip episode 7 or you can skip episode 7 there. I didn't give you much choice there, to be fair. But anyways, let's talk about episode 7's cut contents first and foremost. Actually, before we get in, if you guys want to know what we're driving today, we're driving a Porsche Cayman GT4, and we are on the Nordschleife, one of the best tracks on the planet, if not the best track on the planet, arguably. One of the most technical and difficult tracks, dangerous as well at times. But yes, we're on the Nordschleife with the Porsche Cayman GT4. Now, of course, one thing to note before we get into this video is that episode 7 is probably going to be the bulk of this video. I will say that immediately, because it did feature a lot more cut contents compared to episode 8. I didn't realize how little they actually cut from episode 8 until I sat down to, well, first and foremost read volume 17 again, and that section of volume 17 again, and also when I was rewatching the episode and seeing what they had and didn't have, of course, right? Now, one thing to mention about episode 7 is that that was probably the weakest episode of the season, as you guys may have seen from the title of the video last week when I did my breakdown video, right? But at the same time, I can understand why they had to make the cuts that they had to. It was all down to just time, realistically. And that was the biggest struggle of last episode, was that they struggled for time, realistically. This is where I will say it became very clear and obvious that they needed more episodes. It's as simple as that. Every other episode, you could argue that they could kind of get away with it. Last episode was where they needed more time. And the reason for that is because everything I'm going to talk about in terms of episode 7 is literally just, oh, it was expanded scenes, they cut this, they cut this, they cut this from this scene, they cut this from that scene, and it's just every scene being chopped up in some way, shape, or form. Let's start off with the very beginning of the episode, right? Episode 7's beginning with Asfi and Ryu. In the light novel, it was actually a lot more expanded than that, and in fact, the infiltration scene with them as well was a lot more expanded. They had a lot more banter between one another. In fact, I remember one joke from Asfi about how Ryu's already blacklisted, so her, infiltrating Orario again and being blacklisted again is not a new experience technically, and it was quite funny to read it in the light novels, of course, right? Would have been nice to see that in the anime as well, but I understand why they skipped it, and I think it was the right decision to cut that, at least in my opinion. If there was anything that they had to prioritize cutting, I think that is something that is fine for to be put on the cutting board, I think, honestly. But after that it becomes a little bit more tricky to justify them cutting content. It becomes a lot more trickier, unfortunately, for them to for me to say, yeah, it's right that they skipped it. In my opinion, this is where an extra episode, like I said, was needed. So the first scene that I have to talk about when it comes to cut contents is probably the Hessian or Ondurano scene, which I did say in last week's breakdown that I think it was the right decision for them to have condensed it. I would kind of like to backtrack on that a little bit, not by too much, but I think I would like to backtrack on it a little bit. The reason why I want to backtrack on it a little bit is because I feel like while I don't mind them skipping on a bulk of the, topic that they had and the discussions they were having, I think there was one key discussion point that they should have included, especially considering everybody's super confused as to how Freya's getting away with it, and that is the discussion of Freya, is it, ethical for Freya to have charmed everybody? And Hestia asks this question as to why, nobody like Uranus has made the decision to, send her back to heaven and stuff, because she's charmed the entire world, or the entirety of Aurario, I should say, specifically, more so, not the entire world, but Aurario specifically. And Uranus is like, well, she's not out of her realm to do so, because technically she's not used her Arcanum. Arcanum is the way for, gods to be sent back to heaven. Freya hasn't used her Arcanum. The charm that she's used is a part of her, just like how Hephaestus's blacksmithing is a part of her, or Guibinu's blacksmithing is a part of him, and or Demeter's whole thing of harvesting fruits and stuff like that and farming is a part of her, basically, right? You can't remove that from Freya necessarily. It's not her using her Arcanum to charm everybody. It's just using her natural ability to charm that's caused this issue, which technically isn't grounds for her to be sent back to heaven, technically. So I think that would have been nice to have included that a little bit more and expanded upon so that people could understand that a little bit better. But again, like I said, I think the majority of it being skipped is fine for me personally, and that's where I think the limits of my being okay with getting skipped content was done for this episode, because everything else from this point onwards was kind of needed, and I'm kind of annoyed that they didn't include it. I'm not gonna really harp on about it, and to be honest, I'm not gonna complain about it too much in the sense of like, I'm not gonna make this another rant video or anything. I'm gonna straight down put the facts down for you guys to obviously make a judgment for yourselves as anime onlys, or even as light novel readers, as to whether or not you want it or not. Because one of the things I noticed from last episode's breakdown, right, was that a lot of you guys actually enjoyed the episode as anime only, which I'm very happy about, in all honesty. And I'm not saying this sarcastically. A lot of you guys will probably say I'm saying this sarcastically, but no, I'm really being serious. I'm happy that people enjoyed the episode, because I was a bit worried that, with the way the pacing was, as a light novel reader, I felt like it was a little bit all over the place, right? But I think a lot of anime onlys actually really enjoyed it. They said that a lot of people did say, yes, it could have been a bit better, but it's not the end of the world, of course, right? It wasn't the end of the world for people to, for the episode to have been a little bit all over the place. It still got the points across. It was still very emotional, and that was the most important thing. And I think, that's absolutely fair, of course, right? I think that's absolutely fair, and I think that is the most important thing for the episode to have done, is to be emotional, especially with the whole Anya scene that we will talk about in just a moment, right? So with the Hestia and Uranus scene, then we go on to obviously the Liaris Freeze scene, of course, right? This is something I kind of spoke about in my breakdown video a little bit, right? And they kind of just ran through the explanation and gave it only 1 or 2 lines in the anime. Now, this is where I don't know whether or not I mind them ignoring the explanation or not, because somebody made this point to me and said, well, technically, it's not like they haven't mentioned Liaris Freeze before, and, them continuously explaining Liaris Freeze again and again to the audience can become annoying. So, while I agree with that, I feel like they haven't really done a good job in explaining Liaris Freeze up until this point either, in various episodes. Oops. Well, I took too much of the curb there. But they haven't done a really good job of explaining Liaris Freeze, in my opinion, up until this point in the anime, right? And I'd argue that I would appreciate if they did they did the job here, because it would have been the perfect opportunity to also get an idea of what Freya's trying to exactly do to Belle, and the reasoning behind breaking him so much and trying to wear him down, basically, because of how important Liaris Freeze is to Belle's development and growth as a character and as a adventurer, even, I should say, and in his strength and abilities, of course, right? I think that would have been super, super nice to see, and of course, have be broken down, at least in this season. I feel like at least once per season maybe should be good for them to explain Liar's Freeze, because it at least keeps people in the loop as to what Liar's Freeze is, and nobody will forget about it necessarily super easily, considering how integral it is to the series, right? At the end of the day, of course, right? And I mean, you see it in episode 8 as to why it's so integral, and again, that's why I say them skipping out on it is kind of frustrating in that sense, to be quite honest. But that being said, though, I also get what my friend was saying in terms of like them explaining it too much can also be quite frustrating. But yes, it was something that was skipped out. It was explained a lot more in detail in the light novel, and in the anime they just gave it one line. So you guys can let me know, what do you guys think? Should they have explained Liar's Freeze more as anime only, or do you guys think it's fine for them to have just glossed over it a little bit and just made a mention of it and moved on from there? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something I think they shouldn't have skipped out on. And while they didn't skip out on the second scene, the first scene was removed from its initial position, and that was, of course, Freya having the questions internally, the doubts internally arise, of course, for whether or not she's making the right decisions, whether she's doing the right thing, basically, here with the way she's approaching Belle and stuff, right? And we see that at the end of the episode when she's looking at the amulet and stuff, right? And in the light novel, she also does it when she's obviously talking about Liar's Freeze as well, a little bit as well. Unfortunately, that kind of gets glossed over a little bit in the anime. Unfortunately, it doesn't. I say it a little bit. It gets glossed over entirely in the anime. And unfortunately, that is kind of unfortunate, because I feel like they should have kind of doubled down on the doubts that she is having, because that is something that you have to kind of realize, that Freya isn't necessarily this super one-dimensional evil character that she is. She's got multiple facets to her, and of course we know this because of what happens at the end of the episode, like I said. And they have to double down on that, because it can't just be like, oh, one scene and you're done, because this episode obviously featured her as somebody who's really close to breaking Belle down, when he's when I say this episode, I mean episode 8, of course, right? We see how close Freya is to Freya is to that's one way to put it. How close Freya is to breaking him, right? So I think it would have been nice to also see Freya's side of the thing, of like, she's doubting herself on whether she's doing the thing right thing, and is she doing it properly and stuff. I think it would have been nice to see that, of course, in the anime. And I'm kind of glad we obviously got one of it, but it should have been a little bit more. Damn, I'm driving poorly right now. Let's just get back on track slowly and just drive slowly a little bit before we kind of spin out a bit more. Now, we get to the crux of the matter in episode 7, where I think they should have done a better job here. This was where I think it was the weakest point of the episode, in all honesty. And it is, of course, the entirety of the Anya, Freya, Ryu, Alan, all of that jazz, all of them, when they're together. That scene was condensed so much in the anime. It is unbelievable. So first and foremost, they entirely skipped out on Anya and Alan's backstory, which is not necessarily, I would say, the problem is, right, I'd say that because of how important the Hostess of Fertility and Anya is, and also the Freya familia generally, and how they came to be, and also generally with what Alan is capable of doing, of course, right? And why Alan is so much stronger than Anya and stuff. I think it would have been super nice to see that, in all honesty, because at least it would have allowed people to, connect with the characters a little bit more. I understand this is a whole time constraint thing, and adding a whole backstory, it probably would have taken another 10-15 minutes maybe. Again, that would have been half an episode pretty much in itself. So I can kind of get what as to why they might have skipped out on it. But this is what I mean by an extra episode would definitely have not gone amiss, to be honest. It definitely would not have gone amiss, and I'm kind of annoyed that they skipped out on it. It's just so annoying that they skipped out on it, because you would have connected to Anya more. You would have felt those emotional beats a little bit more. Like, genuinely, I think they could have easily split this episode into its halves. So, like, the whole infiltration scene with Asfi and Ryu, and also the Anya scene and everything, could have been in the second episode. And then the first episode would have been Asfi and Ryu linking up. Hestia Uranos themes, and of course then you have obviously the Liara Street scene and all of that jazz. I think it would have been way better in that manner, to be quite honest. I generally feel that way, at least personally. But that being said, we've got what we got. Now let's talk about it, right? So I feel like having the backstory would have definitely helped a lot. And then, of course, the entire interaction scene between Anya, Freya, and then, of course, Freya and Ryu, of course, indirectly, it was definitely something that lacked a little bit. It felt like they were lacking in some way, shape, or form. It was kind of a shame that it did feel that way, to be quite honest, because in the light novels, it felt a lot more emotional. It felt like there was a lot more drama. There was a lot more back and forth between the two characters, right? Because in this episode, what ended up happening was we had Freya doing the reveal, Anya then reacting, Anya getting kicked, Ryu making her appearance, and then yeah, that's it pretty much. And then obviously Root gets taken down and everything, and then Anya, sobs and wails out basically, right? There's a lot more back and forth in the light novel, and I think that would have been much more appreciated rather than them just, obviously doing it the way they did. And again, that's where I say, like, an extra episode would have not gone amiss. So, yeah, like I said, it's just a lot of scenes in episode 7 that should have been extended. These are just scenes that should have been extended majorly, and they weren't, unfortunately. They were condensed, and understandably so as to why they were condensed. We're approaching the end of episode 8 basically, right? And with the end of episode 8, I should say, or sorry, I mean volume 17, and with the end of episode 8, we are literally like one episode away from the finale of volume 17, and then from episode 10 we're going to be getting into volume 18 content. So I understand why they did it, but this is again an issue from Warner Brothers or whoever is running the episode counts for JC staff and telling them this is the episode count they have. They gotta give them more episodes, man. Like, why did season 4 get 22 episodes so easily, and then we're back down to 15 episodes for season 5? It just doesn't make any sense for me. Any sense to me. I wouldn't have said we needed more episodes than season 4. I think, heck, we could have taken less episodes. As I've been saying for a very long time, 3 episodes extra, you give us 18 episodes, and you are in a very good spot already. And where I feel like, yeah, we needed 18 episodes, because I think outside of episode 5 and 7, volume 17's been good, to be quite honest, and volume 16 was also very good in my personal opinion. I'd say, again, 1 episode maybe could have been needed there, but for sure 1 extra episode here would have solved every issue with volume 17's adaptation. And with episode 5, all you needed to do was remove the opening and ending, and you were good pretty much, right? So realistically, volume 17 so far has actually been a good adaptation. It's just been a damn shame that we've unfortunately been we've been dealt a bad hand by getting only 15 episodes, sadly. Now we'll see how volume 18 goes. That's for the future us to figure out and see, of course, right? But yeah, I mean, like I said, this is something that I'm kind of it's kind of disappointing in a way, but I understand that, at the end of the day, this is corporal stuff, unfortunately meddling in with the way the anime is being done and everything. So yeah, it is what it is. But that is episode 7's cut contents. If you have any other questions or anything regarding episode 7's cut contents, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. I'll try and explain it better in the comments as well. But let's move on to episode 8's cut contents. And like I said, episode 8's cut contents isn't actually that much. It's actually quite little. In fact, there's not that many cut contents for episode 8. And in fact, the only major thing that they cut from episode 8 was literally when Hermes was, figuring out all this stuff regarding the I kind of hit the grass a little bit too much there. When Hermes was trying to figure out all this loop thing and everything, the whole memories being lost and whatnot, right? Along with, of course, him, giving the keywords out and everything, the reason why he actually realizes that he's in a loop is because Zeus keeps sending him a message saying, why are you ignoring me? Why is it taking you so long to send me a message? And that wasn't in the anime. The anime kind of ignored that Zeus has been sending him messages day in, day out. In the light novel, they actually mention it, and of course explain also why Hermes took so long to send the messages. And I think this might be one of the reasons why as to they cut it, but they included things from like Sword Toria's events, things with the Xenoses and stuff. While they could have included the Xenosis stuff and everything, right? In theory, you would think that, okay, it's very little for, Hermes to get involved with, in terms of like, okay, it's only one thing that happened. He could have sent a message otherwise, right? But because they don't have Sword Oratoria and the Gnosis event, basically, right, which did take a lot of time, and it took the entirety of Aurario to deal with that whole situation. Again, I highly recommend you guys go check out Don Mimo's version of Sword Oratoria if you haven't already. Because again, if you we don't know if we'll ever get an anime adaptation for Sword Oratoria. So the best thing to do is just go and watch the Don Mimo version or read the SO manga, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about, right? But yeah, this is one of the reasons why I feel like they could have they kind of cut the Zeus thing, because otherwise it wouldn't have made any sense realistically as to why he's been not able to send messages to Zeus, right? Maybe you could say that Freya would have had a hand in it as well, but I think it's unlikely, because then Freya would have realized that Zeus is still around and stuff. So I think it's just one of those things that they had to kind of cut, because yeah, it's just unfortunately due to Sword Oratoria missing. Unfortunately, again, it all comes back to Sword Oratoria not doing well and not being adapted more, which is kind of frustrating to say the least. But anyways, outside of that, realistically, not much was cut. You could argue that maybe a line or two was cut from here and there. I think the most important thing that was cut, and I think we'll talk about this in the extra details video, is you could say, when it comes to lines being cut, right, is Ai's line, where she, or not Ai's line, but Belle's line to Ai's, basically, where she says, I'm glad that I admire you and whatnot, right, or you are the one that I admire, right? He also says, I'm glad that I met you, or something like that, or along those lines. I can't remember the exact line at the top of my head right now, but it's something along those lines, where he says, I'm glad that I met you. And I think that would have been nice to have, of course, right, because it would have definitely doubled down on the whole Ai's Belle thing and all that jazz. But I mean, again, do I think it's necessary? I wouldn't say it's necessary, but it would have been appreciated, I think. I think it's not a necessary line, because, I mean, let's be real, the whole admiring thing, we know, considering, how Belle was reacting to Ryu when, Ryu was going off on him for rejecting Seer. And then, of course, in the start of this episode, where he's like, I don't remember who I admire, who I'm trying to reach, or who I'm trying to strive towards. And we finally get it at the end of this episode, of course, right? And it still hit the same, right? I mean, everybody felt that way. Everybody felt the impact of that scene, right? And so for me personally, I don't mind that that line was skipped. Would it have added to the scene? Absolutely. I think it would have added to the scene. But it's not like I will say the scene was weakened in any way, shape, or form without it either, to be fair, and you know what I mean? I don't think it was. So that's just my personal opinion on that. But outside of that, again, episode 8 was actually a really good adaptation, in all honesty, just like how episode 6 was really well done. This episode, again, very well done, supremely well adapted, hit the right points, and overall really enjoyable episode. And like I said, I think it might be my favorite episode of the season personally so far, but again, it's only been 2 days. Recency bias is obviously a thing, so I'm gonna obviously give it a couple of days, and I'm gonna do obviously a massive rewatch at the end of the season to just watch all the episodes in one go, and then we'll talk about what was my favorite episode, what wasn't my favorite episode, and stuff, right? But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Once again, I ask you guys to leave a comment down below, of course, if you guys have any other questions or anything that I might have missed out on in regards to episode 7 and 8's cut contents. But leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, take it easy, everybody. Ciao.